It was a rough couple of days for the White Sox. Lopsided loss to the Kansas City Royals on Wednesday. Then the Sox fell to Team Columbia on Thursday afternoon. Dylan Cease struggled against the Royals, but is it anything to be concerned about? More attention for Hanser Alberto and what are national baseball pundits saying about the White Sox. Also, the Sox released a second wave of stadium giveaways, forcing me to buy more tickets.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. Happy Friday, less than 3 weeks away until opening day. Appreciate you continuing to pass along this podcast to other White Sox fans in your life. Get those questions and comments in for Wednesday's mailbag. You can do that at lockedonsox@gmail.com. White Sox spring training 2023, record 6-5, and they are 0-1 in World Baseball Classic play, I guess. So the White Sox and Royals talked a little bit about this game, just a little bit on the previous episode, but Sox and Royals were at it Wednesday night. It was a 7 p.m. game. And I was watching a little bit of it on the MLB TV app through being a season ticket holder. I've got a subscription. So you got the Royals broadcast team, but I was watching it just a little bit just to see how Dylan Cease did. And then I stepped away. Sox got absolutely embarrassed, 14-5 against the Royals. The game was over. After the second inning, Dylan Cease went 2/3 of an inning. Gave up 7 hits, 11 earned runs, 4 walks, 1 home run. It was a grand slam. His spring ERA is 37.13. So I stepped away from the game after Dylan Cease was pulled. You know, he just couldn't locate any of his off-speed stuff, really couldn't locate any of his pitches. And although he did not give up any runs in his first outing last Friday, that was one of the games I was at in Glendale at Camelback Ranch, he just wasn't terribly sharp. But he got out of the inning thanks to some great defense behind him in his first outing. So is Dylan Cease worried? And here were some of his comments after the game. It was a lot of walks, a lot of hits, a lot of runs, Cease said. Definitely not a good night. Really just not a good, 2/3 of an inning, 20-something pitches. But I left healthy. Thankfully, it's spring, so I'm just going to learn from it and kind of flush it. Obviously, in spring, it's a mix of locating stuff and building up. Sometimes it's not the worst thing to get punched in the face a little. It gets you going, but obviously not ideal. I didn't get my slider in the zone at all, and pretty much they were able to spit on it. And then they got to the heaters. He said, it's never fun to give up runs. It's frustrating, especially when the biggest thing is calibrating, getting that strike zone dialed in. It's kind of why we're here for spring. A lot of times it's just reps, still getting ready. Unfortunately, I wasn't good today. If I did this 4-5 times in a row, I'd get a little worried. Honestly, I'm just going to flush this one, C said. I'm in a good spot. I'm mid 90s right now, so not quite probably what I'll get to. The biggest thing is just getting in the zone right now. I've been doing a good job in my pens and practice doing it, but now I've just got to translate it to the game. I thought that was pretty good attitude from Dylan Cease. Might not have had that attitude earlier in his career. Obviously frustrated, of course, but the whole just flush it. Maybe sometimes you do just have to get rattled a little bit. He's coming off just an unbelievable season. And maybe, one of these types of outings shakes him up a little bit. Says, you know what? I'm mortal. These guys have video off of me. Plus, I just couldn't get it over the plate. And it is difficult in Arizona with your breaking stuff. So I thought that was a good attitude by Dylan Cease, even though you got to believe Cease was extremely frustrated. And he even said it, but just need to turn the page. Sox used 7 other pitchers after Cease. Avila and Kelly were the only ones to give up additional runs to Kansas City. Sox pitching allowed 16 hits, 14 runs, 6 walks, a couple home runs, and struck out 6. White Sox offense was not much better. 5 runs on 5 hits. Some of those runs rather late in the game. 0 extra base hits. White Sox struck out 10 times and only walked twice. Gavin Sheets was the only starter to get a hit. Romy Gonzalez was 0 for 2. He's hitting .059 in Cactus League play. I eventually did go back and I rejoined the telecast, probably middle of the game. And I find it kind of interesting because the Kansas City Royals announcers, they had Ned Yost in the booth. And Ned Yost obviously won the World Series with the Kansas City Royals. He was the manager. Pedro Grifol was around at that time. And Ned Yost had some great praise for Pedro Grifol. That was interesting. They spent a few minutes on that as he was talking about his relationship with Pedro Grifol and why he thinks Grifol will be a great manager. Ned Yost was in the booth because Ned Yost is going into the Royals Hall of Fame. One of the many teams in Major League Baseball that has their own Hall of Fame. I've talked about it before on this podcast. I wish the White Sox would adapt this this option, and have this going forward. How cool would that be to have a White Sox Hall of Fame? But I don't know, maybe somewhere down the line. Thursday afternoon, the Chicago White Sox fell to Team Columbia 5-4. If there ever was a lineup that defines spring training, the White Sox put it together on Thursday afternoon. You had Hazley, Remillard, Reyes, Ramos, Carlos Perez behind the plate, Sosa DHing, Eric Gonzalez, Jose Popeye Rodriguez, and Hackenberg. Sox scored 4 runs, had 6 hits, 2 extra base hits. Perez was 2 for 2 and had an RBI. Sox only struck out 6 times compared to 3 walks. They were 2 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Not a surprising outcome when you saw the players that they rolled out. Scholten started the game. He went 3 innings, gave up 5 hits, 3 earned runs, 0 walks, 3 strikeouts, 1 home run. He's got a 9 flat ERA for the spring. It hit all the feels of a B game. Sox threw 6 other arms that will most likely not see 35th and Shields in April. That was the only game the White Sox will have against a team from the World Baseball Classic. Sox take on the Cubs on Friday afternoon. That game will be on the Marquee Network. Most if not all White Sox fans are banking on health, of course, and a majority that I've talked to are cautiously optimistic about the 2023 White Sox. But what is the national buzz for our Sox? More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays some time ago, and I know my goal, eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just the thing for you. You have got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. They're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution if you are still on that as we approach mid-March. What makes Built Bars so good? For starters, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros, and what's even better, they are healthy. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box in the mail. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk up to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. Love those Built Bar puffs. Highly recommend them. So we know locally what a lot of fans are saying and journalists, but what about at the national level in regards to our Chicago White Sox? What kind of offseason did they have? What could potentially 2023 bring? MLB Trade Rumors, they do some really good stuff. And there's a pretty detailed write-up by Tim Durkis from MLB Trade Rumors on the White Sox offseason. He really went into depth on all the happenings and offered his perspective. If you haven't really been following what has been going on with the Chicago White Sox, this article catches you up to speed. It is very detailed on all the signings. Just came out recently. And this is what Durkins had to say. While Hahn likely entertained more trades than the ones that reached the rumor mill, ultimately, his offseason was a predictable one. The chances of the 2023 White Sox mostly rest on players that were already in-house. Specifically, it will boil down to 7 players who disappointed due to some combination of injury and underperformance in 2022. Anderson, Robert, and Jimenez have been unable to stay healthy the past 2 years. Lucas Giolito, Yohan Moncada, Yasmani Grandal, and Lance Lynn combined for a 15.9 WAR in 2021 and a 4.2 in 2022, a difference of nearly 12 wins. Though the club can't count on big offense from Andrus or Colas, the other 7 members of the team's likely starting lineup all project as above-average hitters. The team's rotation is fronted by Cy Young runner-up Dylan Cease, while Lynn and Giolito should be solid, if not aces. Even without Hendricks, a bullpen fronted by Kendall Graveman, Aaron Bummer, Joe Kelly, and Ronaldo Lopez could be formidable. The 2023 White Sox are a team that is surprisingly easy to dream on, but also a team light on depth in certain spots. If Grandal struggles again, Sebi Zavala isn't likely to provide much offense from the catcher spot. There are some backup plans for Anderson and Moncada, but the outfield looks thin if Robert goes on the IL or Colas doesn't hit the ground running. Similarly, the rotation has question marks in the 4th and 5th spots with Michael Kopech and Clevenger, and has little room to sustain injuries. While the 2022 season left a bad taste in fans' mouths, Fangraphs suggest the AL Central is mostly a toss-up among the Guardians, Twins, and White Sox. It'll be interesting to see what this post-hype team can do if players stay healthy. So now there's some national perspective, and we've heard from some of the columnists through the Athletic and Bowden, who seems to be pretty high on guys like Robert and Vaughn. But whether it's local or national, we all seem to be kind of hearing the same thing. Boy, this team has got potential. Just look at what these guys can possibly do. What happened last year? And obviously, Bob Nightingale will let you know it's players' faults from the previous episode in that USA Today article. But there's more going on. There was a lot happening. It was a perfect storm last season of all kinds of stuff. And hopefully, we are really turning the page here. And it started with Pedro Grifol and his coaching staff, bringing guys like Elvis Andrus back and really talking up Oscar Colas. And I hope that I hope he continues to plug away and stays level-headed, and pushes through some of these dog days, because there's going to definitely be some peaks and valleys for Colas. And I'm wondering, with a guy like Colas, we ran into this several years ago with Luis Robert. Won't he start on opening day? Will they hold Robert back so they have more control over him? Of course, that's been a thing, namely with Chris Bryant years ago. But the White Sox offered, Robert an extension, and completely, removed any confusion over whether he will be on the opening day roster or not. Could the White Sox actually do that with Oscar Colas? I don't know. Is he in that company? Could they say, here you go, you are on this opening day, we want you for the long haul, here's a contract extension? That could be a situation. The Sox are known to do that. They've done that with Eloy Jimenez and Moncada, and Anderson got a contract extension years ago. I mean, he didn't even have a full major league season under his belt, and they gave him an extension. So the White Sox are known to do that. We'll see what happens in these next several weeks. But of course, everybody is talking about health. You just got to stay healthy. And Dylan Cease mentioned it, in his blurb, which I thought was great. Look, I came out of the game healthy. If you've been reading some of the articles nationally, that's not the case. Former White Sox pitcher Carlos Rodon is having some forearm issues. He might not even be on the opening day staff for the New York Yankees. So I think Cease has the right mentality, and I think that's also going through a lot of players' minds right now. Is okay, we're around the halfway point. We're trying to get to the other side here. And at what point do you just start saying, okay, I just want to get out of Arizona healthy? Everybody knows what has been going on with the White Sox over the last several years. So that has got to be in their head, wondering what message Pedro Grifol sends to the team, because he's got to know it as well. Speaking of Grifol, continuing to sing the praises for Hanser Alberto, and the White Sox released new promo nights and stadium giveaways. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So earlier this week, after I got back from Arizona, talked about kind of some things that I saw, and Hanser Alberto really impressed me. And I was kind of tracking him before I went down to Arizona. And again, small sample size. It's the spring. Here's a guy, kind of a journeyman infielder, can do just about everything. But the Sox brought him in. Were high on him, and I think there was a Grifol connection for sure. And there's been Chuck Garfien put out a podcast on Alberto, and there's been a couple articles written. I think he's a guy that could make the team as a utility guy. I get it. Lurie Garcia is owed a lot of money, but we'll see. Everything I'm reading and hearing about Alberto, a lot of praise for this guy. The latest article I read was in the Chicago Tribune by Lamont Pope. And this is what Alberto had to say. I feel great up there, Alberto said recently. I've been doing a lot of work and it's showing out there. I'm happy about it. I want to continue to do the hard work and the results out there. I'm going out there with a good plan and just trying to be ready to hit and put the best swing I can. And I think I'm doing it right now. It's a great organization, Alberto said. I heard a lot of good things. I know the manager, Pedro Grifol. I know pretty much the staff and the guys around here. I knew a lot of them before I came here. I see a good opportunity here to make the team and have fun. Just go out there and do my thing, control what I can, and whoever has to make the decision, they'll do their job. Just go out there, have fun, and try to be the best I can be here in the clubhouse and on the field. Pope wrote, Alberto has a 272, 294, 380 slash line with 70 doubles, 19 homers, 121 ribbies in 458 career games. He slashed 244, 258, 365 with 2 homers and 15 RBIs in 73 games with the LA Dodgers last season. Here's Grifol. He's doing what he does, Grifol said of Alberto. He's a leader. He's high energy. He's a swinger. He has a knack for hitting, for situational hitting. He secures the baseball. This is not just a spring training thing for him. This is who he is. I could probably tell you I'm impressed, but I'm not. I've seen him play before. I've seen him play against us, and we've been on the same team with the Royals. This is who he is. So was Alberto a guy that maybe was on Pedro Grifol's wish list? We talked about it way back when, maybe in December. Did Pedro Grifol, we know Pedro Grifol had his say on coaching staff, but did he have his say in certain players? There's been obviously some chatter about Andrew Benintendi. Front office asked Grifol, and Grifol's like, well, since you're asking me, this is what I think of Benintendi. And long story short, he is a member of the Chicago White Sox. Did that happen with Alberto? Hanser Alberto played 103 games for the Royals in 2021, where he slashed 270, 291, 402. Again, Grifol, this is my 32nd year in the game, but he's probably the best teammate and clubhouse guy I've been around. There is 0 ounce of selfishness to his game or to his being. This guy is all about working hard, winning, helping others, serving others. He wants to see everybody improve, and that's the way he goes about his business. Again, Pedro Grifol on Hanser Alberto, Lamont Pope of the Chicago Tribune with the article. Hey, if you're all about culture, togetherness, chemistry, which are the things that Grifol was preaching way back in November, and that's how he led his camp so far, then I see a guy like Hanser Alberto making this team at this point. That was some high praise from Pedro Grifol, and I do believe that relationship in Kansas City has helped. New promos announced, stadium giveaways. I love these things. There were several, only two bobbleheads, one player bobblehead. We'll get to it. I don't know if you saw this come through. Chicago White Sox released it Thursday afternoon. I saw it on their Twitter feed. So May 14th is now a fanny pack giveaway. May 20th is a 1983 windbreaker. They did it was a 1991 era windbreaker last year. July 29th, there is a White Sox hat. It has the 1960 logo on the front of that. And then August 26th, this is the biggie. Dylan Cease, he's got a bobblehead. He's got the mustache and all in the 1983 jersey. Saturday, August 26th. You know I will be there for that. September 30th, a La Katrina bobblehead in honor of Hispanic Heritage Night. And then you've got Country Music Night, Pride Night, Elvis Night, NASCAR Night, and Rock and Roll Night all happening as well. Dog Day is back. I filled out a little application online to get my dog in there. He has never been to a dog day at Sox Park, so hopefully that all works out. That's May 2nd. And then yoga at the park. I believe that is a Saturday, June 4th. So when you add Dylan Cease now to the mix of bobbleheads, there are 3 player bobbleheads so far. You've got an Eloy Jimenez, that Hi Mom talking bobblehead on May 13th. And then there is a Luis Robert, I believe that's in July. And then now you've got the Dylan Cease, August 26th. So there were 5 player giveaways, player bobblehead giveaways last year. So I would suspect there's another bobblehead or 2 added eventually. Maybe an Andrew Vaughn, maybe a Michael Kopech. Who knows? Hey, also, maybe you caught it Thursday night when it dropped. If you haven't, Last Comiskey Part 2 dropped 8 p.m. Thursday night. Again, the final Part 3 will be Thursday, March 16th. So if you haven't had an opportunity to watch Part 2 or even Part 1, check it out. Again, White Sox game on Sunday, March 12th is on NBC Sports Chicago. So if you have an opportunity, able to watch that. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get those questions in for next week's mailbag, lockedonsox@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, on the next episode, I'll recap the weekend that was for our Chicago White Sox as we inch closer to opening day. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.